Hi everyone. My name is Joe Strickland, and I run Chronic Insanity, which are the makers of All Falls Down Sorrowborough. It's our first Jubensha, and I was fortunate enough to be asked to present a workshop at the Immersive Experience Network Summit in London in October on making your first Jubensha. A lot of people have asked to see the slides from that workshop, and I don't think it was one of the ones recorded on the day, so I'm just recording this for the next hour or so to go over those slides and what I told everyone in the room that day, in case it's useful. Let us begin. So, making your first Jubensha by me. Artist, director and CEO of Chronic Insanity and owners of jubensha.co.uk. We started off by just explaining what is Jubensha. We described it as a sort of a tabletop RPG crossed with interactive theatre. There's often a social deduction and mystery game element. Like, there is a mystery at the core of it, but it doesn't just have to be a murder mystery. It can be anything, and normally social deduction meaning that everybody around the table, all the players, all the characters have part of this solution and have to work together to try and figure out the full mystery. They can be played for anywhere between 2 to 5 hours, but obviously can last much more than that. You often have character scripts, whether those are explicit lines to say or whether that is more of a like a lore and a backstory to learn about your character before you then improvise and perform as them for each other as part of the experience. But there's often an on-the-rails story. The story has been pre-chosen, and you are performing that story, uncovering the past and playing through any present as already authored by whoever's created the game, more often than not. These are often locked room-style mysteries, where someone among you is the perpetrator, where no perpetrator could have left, and where no new people can kind of come in and interrupt you either. Things like desert islands, trapped in a city, remote tribe, plane crash in a forest, those sorts of areas where everyone who is there is stuck there and that one of you is responsible. There's often a nice easy way of doing it. They have low prep time for audiences, so you can just turn up and play, and can be played with or without a GM in a lot of cases. Some need a GM, but there are other games that don't necessarily need a GM. And there are multiple genres of Jubensha as well. They can include factional, based on fact, emotional Jubensha, which are more kind of like emotive stories. They can be romantic, they can just be dramatic. Fantasy Jubensha with themes around magic and sorcery and witchcraft, other fantasy elements like you might see in a traditional kind of Dungeons and Dragons game. Historical Jubensha about historical events that happened, and modern Jubensha set in sort of a modern day scenario, dealing with modern day problems. I did talk a little bit about what isn't Jubensha, because I know that talking about what Jubensha is might start making people go, oh, isn't that just this? Isn't that just that? So Jubensha isn't just murder mystery. It isn't just live-action role-playing or LARP. It isn't just D&D. And it isn't just an escape room in places. The reasons why are as follows. Jubensha isn't just a murder mystery because it's not always murder-based. Jubensha can have any sort of mystery at their core. It could be a social mystery. It could be a different crime that isn't murder-specific. So All Falls Down, for example, centres around who is responsible for a plane crash. It's the mystery to be solved doesn't not need to be murder, whereas obviously a murder mystery, they are. They are location agnostic. They don't have to take place in a certain era or area, whereas a lot of murder mysteries do take place in a particular kind of true crime or murdery location, or they take place traditionally in the English-speaking world in the sort of like late 19th, early 20th century Victorian era, the kind of Golden Age, the Flapper era, the Great Depression, those sorts of, those sort of high society, very camp, very Victorian locations a lot of the time, whereas Jubensha can obviously take place wherever. And also they're more story-driven and narrative-driven rather than novelty or entertainment experiences. A lot of murder mystery experiences are novelty and entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that, but Jubensha can delve deeper into characters. It can give you more to chew on and to put yourself in the shoes of and to really explore as a group together. Also, murder mysteries really focus on the murder and what has happened, whereas Jubensha focus on what has happened with the mystery, but can also have a lot more story taking place in the present with the characters as they move through their lives in order to uncover that mystery. It's not just about there is a mystery afoot, let's fix it. It's not a pure logic puzzle. It can be much more nuanced and narrative and story driven than that. Jubensha is not purely LARP because Jubensha is much more convenient. Often a box game can be played anywhere at any time on demand. You don't have to go to a specific location. Jubensha are more affordable, though box games can be expensive, particularly with international audiences and shipping. They are much cheaper than a lot of LARP experiences can be. And also, like I said, Jubensha can be on demand, played whenever, wherever. You often need smaller groups of people. Obviously, there are lots of different types of LARP, but Jubensha, by and large, are more convenient, more affordable, and more on demand. The reason why they are not just D&D is because Jubensha require that low prep time. If you're playing a D&D game, one of you has to sacrifice all of your time and resources to become the DM. You have to create the whole world. You have to try and help build the characters with the players. The players have to prep their characters. You have to come ready to play. You can't just turn up and lock into a fully fleshed out world. But you can do that with a Jubensha. The story is more structured because it's been pre-authored. It's not necessarily growing along with the audience. Now, there are pros and cons to that, but one of the pros is that you, whoever is your DM for your campaign, doesn't need to be an expert storyteller. The story has already been drafted and curated and crafted before you open the box with Jubensha. And also there's less commitment required. Your traditional D&D game goes on for weeks, months, maybe years, and you have to turn up every week, every fortnight, once a month, whatever you decide, ready to go to play for several hours every evening. It's just a thing that not a lot of people always have the commitment for, whereas a Jubensha gives you all of the in-depth, immersive, social gameplay with your friends over a number of hours based in one evening. It's like high fidelity, but low time commitment over a number of weeks. And then they are not escape rooms for lots of reasons, but they are often longer than escape rooms are. Like in the UK, there's maybe 1 or 2 escape rooms that are longer than an hour, definitely not more than 2. So if you want to spend more time with your friends, then your Jubensha is a good way to do that. They're much more affordable if you count the number of players. You know, if our box game Jubensha costs £48 and the average escape room might cost £30 per person for an hour, then a group of 5 people doing an escape room might cost 100, 150 quid for that whole thing for 1 hour, whereas playing our Jubensha is 2 to 3 hours and it's only 10 quid a person. It's much more affordable in that sense. They're easy to access. Escape rooms are in one location, and once you have played all your local escape room games, there are no more to play. Whereas Jubensha, you can order them from wherever, you can play them online, you can play them on Discord, and you can order them and get them or find them online and play them when you need them. There are many more at your disposal and you're not limited by geography. And also then they're story driven. Escape rooms are still largely not driven by story and narrative, and again that makes them novelty and entertainment experiences, and particularly more puzzle solving ones. But if you want something more narratively interesting, then Jubensha is a really good way to distinguish between those two. I then kind of talked about how many Jubensha there are. In English, as published physical games you can play at home, it's like maybe 12. I think we've maybe found a couple more in the last few weeks since then, you know, older games that would maybe fit into the world of Jubensha. This is my collection of games I have at the moment. At the top we have the kind of 5 Z9 mysteries. Below we have Secret Tribe. We've got the Dark Council. We've got a copy of Death Wears White in English. We have a few versions of our own game, Awful Sound Sorbra, and then we have Alison's Missing, which isn't Jubensha, but is the thing that gets brought up the most when I talk to other people about Jubensha, and has a lot of similar qualities of role-playing as a group of friends, trying to solve a mystery, and there being that sort of like really embodying a character, going to different locations and different rounds sort of quality to it. Like the experience feels very similar to a Jubensha, even though it isn't one, but I've included it here all the same. Now, there are more than just these 12. Maybe there's a few more Jubensha online or in the Yuzu app. There's also a few live games too. Some of those are in person, but again, spread around the world, let alone whichever country you're in. And there are live games run online as well. And some of these games are original, and some are personal translations of other games, often in Mandarin. Long story short, it's a very good time to get into making Jubensha as a creator, because we need more of them. The people that play Jubensha and really enjoy it are always running low on experiences, and it's never been a better time to make Jubensha and to release it. There is an audience of people who are really keen to play, and there's like a really hot audience, and then there's a warm audience of people who really love immersive experiences and storytelling experiences and are very much ready for something like this to be offered to them for them to enjoy. All Falls Down Sorobra is our game. This is the game that we made, our first Jubensha. This takes place, the mystery solve is you crash your plane into the middle of the Pacific Northwest, and the mystery is who is the responsible amongst the 5 characters for crashing this plane. With 5 characters, it is a 5-player game, although there are variants where you could play it with 4 or play it with 3 players, though they aren't kind of like hard-coded into the game, but there are definitely some characters that are more core to the core mystery than others. The game goes on for 2 to 3 hours, depending on how much you read and how much you embody the characters. You do not need a GM for the game, although there are instructions and bits of story to read out. So if you have a GM amongst your group, then absolutely there is an opportunity for a GM, but one isn't completely necessary. This is fully card-based. We do not have any scripts printed out in A4 or any large form paper. We have character cards, a number of cards per character that detail their backstory, how involved they think they might be within the mystery, and any other kind of like aims or kind of missions during the experience, not just to figure out who did it or to hide that they did it, but anything else they're trying to hide. All of our characters are hiding something. I think that makes it interesting and keeps it interesting. Gives everybody the chance to be able to play suspicious, which is good fun. So I think, that's what we have on the character cards as well. It's fully professionally illustrated by Len Shaffert or City Art. They're great, really great illustrator. And then it's co-written by Theatre Makers, which is me, and Escape Room Designers, which is Sam Hill, our co-writer for the game. How we made Sorobra? Well, there were some considerations that we had to keep in mind while we were making the game. Firstly, do we adapt a pre-existing story and experience into a Jubensha, or do we write a completely original story? Now, by adaptation, I don't just mean translating a game from Mandarin into English or another language, but I mean, do we take an experience that we already know audiences like and then turn that into Jubensha? So for us, for example, All Falls Down is a live tabletop theatre experience we've been performing across the United Kingdom since 2021. We performed that probably close to 40 times to audiences from 2 people to 50 people. Each time there's been a different threat. A plane crashes with some people on board trying to celebrate the 10th anniversary of their graduation. Old friends who have lost touch. The setup is the same in every game and within the Jubensha, but the threat they have to face in the forest and the story that gets told for them in the forest is different every single time. Sometimes they're more, fighting a bear or a Bigfoot or a sinkhole. Sometimes they're more aliens or ghosts or a little bit more fantasy or a little bit more paranormal, or sometimes they're just like they're billionaires and they're trying to hunt humans for sport, or there are weird people who have made animatronics that are gonna get you in the woods, things like that. None of those are the story for All Falls Down Sorobra. They're just examples of other things we have done. There's a very wide range of threats. So we decided to adapt that game into Jubensha, partly because we knew the audiences really liked that game, really liked that premise, and really got into their characters and always wanted more and always wanted to play again. But as a live experience, it could only run when I was in a city or in a venue running it. So to turn that into a game that people can play whenever they want was something we were really interested in doing. The question then also, I guess, is like, what do you start with when you're making a Jubensha? Do you start with the characters? Do you come up with characters that you think the audience are really going to want to step into the shoes of, really going to want to embody and escape through playing? Are they fantasy characters people get to kind of have powers or strength or cunning or charisma more than they normally do and get to kind of escape from their lives and play those characters? Are these characters from particular backgrounds you want audiences to step into the shoes of to gain a greater understanding of the world, to be enlightened about current events, world events, wherever you are? What is the reason for giving the audience your characters? Maybe that's where you're starting. Maybe you're creating a Jubensha because you want your audience to roleplay as certain people for certain reasons, and that's where you're starting, and then the rest is built around that. Or do you start with the setting? Do you think a forest, or a secret town, or a cyberpunk space, or in a submarine at the bottom of the ocean? Do you think these are cool locations and you want to tell a story within that location? And then we talk about kind of journey and destination. What's the most important thing for you when you're making your Jubensha? Is it the hours that your players spend talking to each other in character, finding clues, trying to figure out and piece together what happens, or which is the journey, or is it the revelation given at the end of the experience and people figuring out whether they're right or not, people figuring out whether they have figured every single detail of the puzzle or of the mystery out, or whether there are some other bits that they left behind, which would be the destination. What do you think is going to be the most important thing for your audience, that journey or that destination? There's not one right answer. Everyone's going to have different audiences and everyone's going to have different artistic reasons for choosing certain things, but I think it's something to consider all the same before you get started. What are you going to care about the most? What are you going to spend the most time on? And where do you begin? Maybe that'll stop you just having a blank piece of paper or a blank Word document open that you can't get something down on. Get something down, pick something to begin with. I don't know if people are familiar with these terms on the next point, fabula and sujet. I think they're Russian folklore research terms, but essentially the fabula is the raw content in the middle of a story, like what a story is made of. The plot, the characters, the setting, the location, what happens in a story. And the sujet is how that story is told, how the raw material is assembled. Is it told in chronological order, reverse chronological order, non-chronological order? Is it told in a linear way, in a branching narrative, in a multi-linear way? Are there jumps backwards and forwards? Do you get different people's perspectives from different characters? Essentially, the fabula is what the story is, and the sujet is how the story is told. And when you're writing any sort of mystery experience, like a Jubensha is, then there's a really interesting interplay between these, because a lot of different characters are going to have a lot of different parts of the content of the story. You're going to give a certain amount of context, kind of like a preamble about how the characters find where they are and what is their shared knowledge to begin with. That's all fabula, but to figure out which parts of the fabula are going to be private information per character and which parts of the fabula will be public for everybody, or now you're thinking about sujet and how you're delivering that, let alone when clue cards reveal certain things or hint to certain things, and how your audience will then pick up on those things, hopefully, as you progress through playing the game. I think it's really important to think about what are the bits that make up your story and your mystery, whether that's pure logic puzzle, whether that's a social mystery, whatever that may be, and then how is that revealed at the beginning and throughout the gameplay. Also, this is someone like Tom Mansfield, really great interactive theatre maker. Upstart Theatre has a lot of talk about mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics when making any sort of interactive experience. To put it simply, the mechanics of the experience are the invisible ways in which the experience works, the skeleton, as you will. That's what you design when you're making it in order to make something functional. The dynamics are like the muscles and the organs of the experience. They're the ways in which the audience interacts with the mechanics that you've created. You create a puzzle, but the dynamics is how the audience interact with that, what they think when they approach that puzzle, and then how that changes their behavior, the interplay between audience and experience, or the user experience design. That's the dynamics. And then the aesthetics is the skin and the hair and the clothes that get put on top of it. Right? What do the audience see? Where is the kind of location? What is the artwork? What's the feeling of the cards or the pages? What's the feeling of the clues? Do you have dice? Is it plastic? Is it metal? Is it wood? How does the box feel? How does sitting down for a certain amount of time? These are all the aesthetics of your experience. The thing to remember when you're designing an interactive experience concerning this is that as the designer, you're going to think about the mechanics, then the dynamics, then the aesthetics. You're going to think about how the game can work, how the experience, how the puzzles can work. Then you're going to think about how people might interact with those. And then you're going to think about how to make that all look nice for people. But audiences always interact with it in the opposite direction. The first impression they get is from the aesthetics. Then they start playing the game and they experience the dynamics. And then some people, whether they are super into this sort of genre or whether they want to metagame, then might start trying to piece together the mechanics, trying to unearth those final layers. But essentially, as a creator, you make things one direction and the audience then experience them in the reverse direction, and maybe never fully experiencing even the mechanics themselves in a raw form. That's just to say, don't spend all your time building a really great mechanics and then not putting enough energy into the dynamics and the user experience, or the aesthetics and the artwork and the soundtrack and anything else you want to include with it, because those are the things the audience spend most of their time experiencing. And if you want to make something for an audience, then you need to dedicate enough time and resources to aesthetics and dynamics, not just having a really amazing mechanism underlying and running your experience. Then we talk about playtesting, pseudo-playtesting, and audience empathy. Obviously, playtest your game, playtest your experience, especially with puzzles. There can be things you think are perfectly logical and things that you think are normal thoughts and leaps, normal facts that will help you solve things. That then, if you playtest a bit, you'll realise that some people get these much faster than you anticipate. Some people do not consider any of them. Playtesting can be difficult with a small audience because you might playtest your experience with everyone at your disposal, and then by the time you have to release it, you might not have anyone who hasn't played the experience, hasn't had it spoiled for them. So you might end up accidentally shooting yourself in the foot from actually releasing your experience and selling it to people. And then if you can't sell it to people, you can't pay yourself as an artist, which you deserve to do. You deserve to be paid for the time you put into creating these wonderful experiences. And then you can't afford to make a second one and a third one and a fourth one and to actually continue to do it outside of just being a hobby. If you want to just do it as a hobby, that's completely fine. Amateur artists are artists, absolutely. Keep doing it, but if you want to make this be part of or the whole of what you get to do for a living, then go for it. You need to think about these sorts of things. This is where I kind of advocate for things like pseudo playtesting. This is where you might playtest something similar to your experience. Maybe it's the same mechanics and the same dynamics, but a completely different aesthetic skin put over it. Different characters and different locations, but what you're really testing there is the mechanics, is the puzzles, is the revelations of clues at certain points, and can that mystery be solved in a way that you think is satisfying, and then you reskin it and release that. A really lovely way of not technically playtesting everything, but playtesting the core elements that run the game and the experience. For us, we did a lot of pseudo playtesting because we'd run this sort of story as a tabletop experience for 4.5 years before we turned it into a Jubensha. And that meant that we knew, and specifically because that experience is very open-ended and you just ask the audience, what do you want to do? And then they tell you, and then you improvise a story along those lines. It means that we know what the audiences of 40 games, somewhere between 2 and 50 people per game, normally around about 20, what's that, like 800 people roughly. We know what they want to do in these sorts of scenarios. You're a bunch of friends, you haven't seen each other for a while, you're in a plane crash, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay with the wreckage or go and find help? Do you want to climb a tree to get your bearings? Do you want to check your phone, see if it has battery or signal? Do you want to use your phone as a torch? Do you want to check the front of the plane and the wreckage, the back of the plane, see what you have in your bags? Do you want to look for a radio? Do you want to look for a map? All of these things we know because people have told us, in this situation, this is what I do. And we essentially have 4 years of playtesting this similar thing to this experience, those beginnings and the beats of the story, the way that they work for an audience. Now that live experience is in an hour, maybe an hour and a half more recently. It's not a 2 or 3 hour experience. It's why it's only a pseudo playtest, and we still have to playtest the game before we then actually release it to people. And you do the same. But I'm saying that there are other ways to playtest. You could run, if you want to test the mechanics of an experience, you can playtest with different aesthetics, maybe different dynamics in order to check that those mechanics work the way you want. If you want to playtest the dynamics of an experience, you could always try different mechanics, different puzzles, and different aesthetics. And if you want to playtest the aesthetics of an experience, you could just run it as a tabletop scenario. Run it, your aesthetics are still what happens in your story in certain ways. So you could run the story as a one-shot tabletop experience for people. Use the dread system, run it as a D&D campaign, regardless of the location, a Call of Cthulhu, whatever you want to do it as. And then you can check if the audience are into your story, if the audience like playing those characters. So yeah, you don't have to playtest the whole thing. You can playtest those elements separately and get a really good understanding. And over time, as you do that more and more often, you'll hone your understanding of audience empathy. You'll be able to understand how you think and how an average audience thinks, or how your perceived audience is going to think, and you'll be able to more easily create experiences for that audience without having to go through such rigorous playtesting and such rigorous pseudo playtesting, although obviously there should always be some playtesting in any instance of making an experience for people, especially if you care about the user experience on the other end. Talk about accessibility, and I mean this in a sense for disabled, deaf and neurodivergent players, not just, although access is much broader as well and can mean things like financial accessibility and things being affordable, geographic accessibility and things being reachable and attendable, and also from a cultural perspective, are you going to make a game with themes that might not carry from culture to culture? We already know that's the case with a lot of the true crime based Jubensha in Mandarin at the moment. People don't think they may be worth translating because the themes in them might be too extreme or too uncarefully included in the narrative for some Western audiences, particularly tabletop audiences who are very much used to welfare being centered in a lot of the games that they play and the experiences they have with each other. But just from a disability and a neurodivergence perspective, we try to make considerations, color combinations when you're printing, high contrast so that they're more easily readable to people. We used a dyslexia-friendly font, so our cards, our experience pieces, however small the text, would still be legible. Text size, how small can you go without it being an access issue for people? What are the feel of the cards? Do they slip on a table easily? With pages in a book, do you want to include narrated and voice-acted versions of any text you have so people don't have to read them if they find that difficult? If you are translating an experience, something that takes 15 to 20 minutes as a character backstory to read in Mandarin is going to take longer in English. Mandarin is a much more information-dense language. So 5,000 words in Mandarin 5,000 words of translated Mandarin might feel like it should take 15 to 20 minutes, but actually might take 30 to 40. So if somebody is dyslexic or does process information more slowly, is there a way they can have that information as prep before the experience starts, before people sit down at the table and go? Or are they going to feel less prepped? And then do those people end up being the murderer or the person responsible for the mystery, the perpetrator, the saboteur? Is that going to impact on things? Is there a way that you can preempt, overcome these issues of accessibility for neurodivergent players and for disabled players? Because a lot of the tabletop audience identifies as disabled, a lot of the tabletop audience identifies as neurodivergent, and these are going to be problems that people will have and might not reply back to you and feed back to you that they're having. I think it is best to preempt these and to think about, particularly if you can playtest with people who identify in these ways, amazing. But I think it's something to consider massively, especially when games go on for hours and hours. Do you have breaks built into the story so people don't feel like they have to take off their character and lose the role playing if a 5-hour game is not going to be accessible to somebody? Things to consider, very open-ended question, but something to consider and something we considered when we made Sorobra. And then again, artistry versus economics versus practicalities. There's a story we want to make in a perfect utopian world, but we also do want to sell it as a product, and so there are certain things we have to include for that, and then practicalities as well. For example, do we build it in a massive big box, even though we know half of our audience is going to be international? Or no, let's try and make it smaller factor so we can ship it for cheaper, so it can be more affordable and more accessible for more people around the world. Do we want to make the artwork look good on a screen, so a digital version will look just as good as a printed version? Economically, do we want to have lots of different parts that need to be assembled by us in some way? Printed paper booklets and cards and maybe other physical props, dice or things like that? Or do we want to try and make it all fit into a small factor tarot deck sized object where it's all just cards and one booklet because our printers already print that, and so our print order will be cheaper. So it can be small enough to post to people. So we can store them physically where we are with more ease. There are these other practicalities and economics to think about alongside the artistry, and you want to try and almost treat that like a Venn diagram and figure out where your experience fits within the sweet spot. So you're not sacrificing on being an artist or a creative, you're making exactly what you want to make in exactly the way you want to make it, but you're not going to end up shooting yourself in the foot later down the line when it comes to shipping experiences to people around the world, when it comes to adapting them into digital experiences, when it comes to making them DM-less or include a DM if they don't already, making them more adaptable in different ways, in different numbers of players or different durations of time, that sort of thing. There's a difficult balance to strike. There are plenty of other considerations when making Jubensha potentially. The user experience design of it, and this is accessibility like I talked about, but also flexibility and convenience. Can you make a Jubensha that is recommended as 7 players, but can play with 6, with 5, with 4, and with 3 people as well, just in case somebody drops out last minute, someone's ill, and now you have to reschedule the whole experience? What if that happens? Because that does happen. Happens a lot and increasingly frequently nowadays, particularly in a sort of a post-COVID world. So how can you design a game that can be experienced in multiple different ways with different players? There are ways to do it, and we've come up with some of them that we're going to implement in our future releases, and absolutely other people should do that as well. And then convenience as well. Is there a way that a game can be played more quickly? Are there recommendations on how to play games so you can, hey, if you play this game this way, it takes 2 hours, but if you play this game this way, it takes 5 hours. What do you want to do? Like, can you make the games the experiences more convenient, more flexible? I think if you do that, we open ourselves up to playing more frequently and for more audiences. What are the expectations of the audience coming into the experience as well? Are they coming from a LARP background and expecting to be able to take their character, own that character, and go wherever they want, and then faced with an on-the-rails Jubensha and story that's pre-authored, and is that going to feel unsatisfying? Or are they coming from a D&D background and expecting to have an open-ended story and then having to figure out whether the convenience of playing a pre-crafted game is going to outweigh the lack of that kind of choice of direction and narrative? We feel like that might be the case with a lot of these warm audiences who aren't playing Jubensha because they love Jubensha, but because they love tabletop experiences with their friends. And we need to figure out how to make experiences that can cater to them as well as everybody. If you're coming from a murder mystery background, do you not like the fact that it's just pure murder mystery, maybe a pure logic puzzle, and that there are other social and social deductive gameplay elements? And how do you manage these expectations? People will read the instructions. Can you tell people they have to read them to each other? Will people read the box? Well, one person probably bought the experience and then is playing that Jubensha with some friends they've assembled. So how do you make sure that people have the right information to have the right expectations before they then play and hopefully enjoy your Jubensha? And do these expectations change internationally? We're talking about an international genre and art form and form of game here. So are there going to be different expectations between different cultures? For example, in my work, I've seen that in the United Kingdom, in Britain, people are much more open to the idea of lo-fi immersive experiences, where they're not all high-tech, they're not super commercial. Someone has rocked up with a story in their head and some stuff they put in a rucksack and they tell a great story. But we don't always see those go down well with American reviewers and American audiences who might be much more in a kind of a corporate immersive space. So they might want high aesthetic and they might value the exquisite execution of an idea. Whereas I think for UK audiences, the kind of conception of the idea and however it's delivered can sometimes be valued in a way. So you don't need to have a big shiny experience, big set, bells and whistles. I'm just saying that there are cultural differences sometimes between people depending on how conservative they are, how liberal they are, and different countries and parts of the world they come from, and what their expectations are going to be on playing any sort of immersive experience, any sort of storytelling experience, any sort of interactive experience. And you should consider those while making a game, particularly if you have a particular audience that you want to pitch it to. Again, where do you want your Jubensha to be played? Are you going to pitch so that it gets played by people at home? Are you going to pitch it so it can be played online? Is it going to be played as a live event that you host in a particular location with a set and with costumes? Or are you going to pitch to the eventual rise of more Jubensha parlors? So do you need a DM and someone to be able to kind of, be a games master for your game? Do you need costumes that will fit and be fun to put on? Do you want it to be able to last a certain amount of time? Parlor games might last longer, where home games might last shorter. Who is your ideal audience for your Jubensha? Where are they going to be playing it? How are they going to be playing it? And does that impact the way that you make your experience? How are you going to fund doing this? Now, you might just be a hobbyist that makes these in your spare time because you love doing it. That's completely fine, like I said. But if you want to get a professional artist to illustrate your art, maybe a composer or a sound artist to make a soundtrack for your game, a co-writer or somebody to design the puzzles for you, let alone if you're printing a game and physically making products, you need that money from somewhere. You can definitely do it from crowdfunding to get it pre-funded. And I think there is enough of an audience now. We had a successful crowdfunding campaign for All Falls Down Sorabra, which if we'd have decided to not do anything before raising the money would have allowed us to then pay everyone on the other end of it. We broke even, if not profited slightly on the crowdfund. Do you go down public funding if you're in a country that has good public funding in the arts? The United Kingdom will publicly fund the arts quite nicely. Maybe you'll get private finance or angel investment or donations in other countries. Europe has very strong public funding of the arts. The US does not have strong public funding of the arts. So are there institutions you can partner with? Museums, art galleries, theatres, other arts organisations that have money, that have that philanthropy coming in, who can then funnel some of it into a little experimental Jubensha performance. And maybe that is a live event, but then you've been paid to come up with the story and the artwork, and then you can release it as a product later. Like, how do you get the money to come in to pay you for your time, your collaborators for their time? And then that stops you turning to AI art, and it stops you trying to get something written by AI and trying to cut corners and trying to not pay artists properly. And, I think getting that funding will allow you to make a product you can be really proud of, and they'll be made by people, for people, in a really considered and careful and well-crafted way. How do you reach your chosen audience? Is it online? Is it social media? Are there now starting to grow up Substacks and Discords and subreddits? So do you just reach out through there? Do you go to conventions? How are you reaching that audience, whoever they may be? How do you distribute your Jubensha? Is it in person? Is it through an online shop? Is it at conventions? Is it just online through partnering with one of the apps that kind of have online experiences, through partnering with people, or reaching out to parlors and asking if they want copies of the game? Going for a distributor, trying to get it into board game cafes and board game shops, emailing them individually, or finding one person. In the UK, we have Asmodee, we have Spiral Galaxy, and most of the board game shops use those two distributors. Do you try and get in touch with them so they distribute your game for you? And then how does that impact on the economics of it? And then also, what is the cost price for audiences, both the purchase price and any additions like shipping to other countries, like tariffs and taxes on the export or imports of goods? Our games are £48, and that reflects the price of a short, small print run, as well as then paying our artist on top of that. Both me and our other co-writer did not take a salary or a fee on this first game, just to get it kind of over the line and get it made. So all in all, our budget for this game in total, I think, was about £3,600, and our Kickstarter raised about that much. We broke even on it. If we made this a larger print run, then our cost for printing per unit would come down. We'd be able to sell the game for cheaper, and we're looking at doing a second run, maybe working with a distributor. And if we do that, we'll be able to knock something like 25% of the price off of our game. So rather than somewhere in the high 40s, they'd end up being much more in like the mid 30s, which is great and is where we want this game to be eventually. There are just logistics economically with paying artists fairly and making a creative thing that mean that at the moment the price is 48. We haven't necessarily seen in person in the UK with immersive audiences. We haven't seen an issue with that pricing, and people have been very happy to pay it. I think if you compare it to, rather than going to an escape room with your family, which would cost you 100, 150 quid, buy this game and it costs you less than 50. But obviously then when you put in international shipping, you put in tariffs and external taxes, shipping the game can be too expensive for some people. So we're working to make sure that the next print run can have a cheaper fee. We're allowing people to play the game online for each other, and we might be working with some of the kind of apps in order to try and get some version of this game or future games onto the apps so that they are more accessible to more people. Because at the end of the day, we're not telling a story to make money. We're telling a story so people can hear it, and anything that we can do in order to make the story heard by more people, the experience experienced by more people, is something we're super interested in doing. And by additions, I just mean like postage, tax, stuff like that. Where can we take Jubensha further, though? We all love the games we've played, but that doesn't mean that they're going to stay like exactly those games forever. So can we move the art form and the genre forwards in any way? Can we have a greater focus on story while playing, not just story having happened and being discovered? A lot of mystery games are about the mystery and trying to uncover that mystery, but sometimes we don't tell a story about what's happening with the players, with the characters in the present. In All Falls Down Sorrowborough, we absolutely do that. And while you're uncovering the past, both the past of anything you find around you and the past of your friendship group as well, you're also still having a story told and acting out that story in the present of trekking through the forest and dealing with whatever it is that you uncover while you do that. How can you tell a story in the present and still also have a fun mystery to play in the past? I'd love to see more games tackle that. A greater focus on flexibility and player convenience, like I said, with changing numbers of players, changing durations of time, that sort of thing. Maybe even with replayability. Can you have choose your own adventures? Can you have does the game play differently with different numbers of players, so actually one person can play more frequently? If I buy the game for a group of friends and they play it, can one of them then buy that Jubensha and then play it with their friends? Is there a particular character or role in the game that sort of knows everything already, that means that somebody can play it in one group, take on that character, and then play it again in a second group to spread the love of your game with more people? More people can experience your Jubensha. A greater focus on accessibility and hybridity, playing games with online audiences, with hybrid in-person and online audiences, as well as making any text readable, having digital versions of text so people can make them any font or any size they want, play them on any screen, making any text read aloud and voice acted professionally so that people can listen to things rather than having to read them, if indeed they find reading things a hurdle to enjoying this wonderful art form. Any introduction to novel technologies to facilitate greater immersion and interaction. We're looking at introducing augmented reality into some of our games in the future, or just novel technologies in the case of like a soundtrack. One of the things that Alice is Missing does really well, not a Jubensha, but very similar in certain ways, is by having an officially licensed soundtrack of bands to the local area the game takes place, and also a countdown video which shows you when rounds are. So you don't need a GM to play the game if you pay attention to the video. It kind of indicates when you should move on to the next thing without somebody having to step out of character to take on board that role, or having someone dedicated to that role. Automated GMing, immersive sound, narrated and voice acted character backgrounds, and augmented reality that allows people to have a more live and immersive way of doing the games. If a clue card is turned over and 5 different people look at it through their phones, 3 people are told, oh, there's a bloody knife, this could be the murder weapon. The murderer is told, that's funny, you didn't kill them with a knife. Act like nothing's wrong. And a 5th person's like, oh, they found that embarrassing fake bloody knife that you keep on with you for some reason. Keep calm about it. It means one card can now be directly experienced in different ways by different people. That's something we're working on, and take that and run with it as well. Build that into your games too. Please do make them as interesting and as playable and interactive and immersive and fun as possible. And I think one of the most interesting things is that we should make the most of a lack of established expectations so that we can create whatever we want with this. Jubensha doesn't just have to be, I played that game, I want to make something exactly like that, although there's nothing wrong with that and you absolutely can do that and you should. But can you take some other element from another type of experience you make, or another type of experience you've played, or another type of thing, film, music, comic books, video games, theatre, novels, whatever it is that you might be influenced by, can you bring that into Jubensha and make it something more? In the same way that you have lots of different type of LARP, you have lots of different type of immersive experiences, we can make lots of different types of Jubensha, not just in a genre way of factional, historic, emotional, but in like, there could be British Jubensha and traditional Jubensha and American Jubensha and European Jubensha. Like there could be subsets, subgenres of the experience that all focus on story, or focus on mystery solving, or focus on different bits and bobs. Don't feel like you have to be making the same thing everyone else is making. Get out there, lead the way, and make something different because you want it to exist. You only have to make it for yourself. And if you're making it for yourself, you'll be making it for other people alongside that. We then had a Q&A in a live version. Obviously, we can't do that in a video, but please do comment. Find us on social media, find us in the subreddit, find us in any Discord server that we're in. Chat to us, ask us questions. I will always have time. Some of you already know I have time to chat to you. If you're making work, if you're just a fan, if you just want someone to talk to about it. So do reach out. I'm always happy to talk to people about making Jubensha. A rising tide raises all ships. If some of us get good at doing it, we need to teach the other people how to do it so that we can then all be good and all rise up and all keep making bigger and better and more interesting and more entertaining and more enlightening and more socially bonding experiences for each other. Speaking of getting in contact, thanks for listening, and let's keep this conversation going. Here are my kind of handles for various things. We're on Instagram and Blue Sky at Crying Insanity Theatre. You can email me. And here is our website, and then at the bottom our Jubensha specific website. All Falls Down Sorrow was a really fun experience, and we're really happy we made it and that it's out there. And we just did our first playtest with journalists specifically, and they really enjoyed it, having never played or even heard of Jubensha before. That was really heartening. We are hoping to release 4 games next year, 2 in the spring, 1 in the summer, and 1 in the autumn. And then continue to release about 4 games, 3 or 4 games a year for the foreseeable future. We have somewhere between 8 and 10 ideas already percolating in various different forms of readiness. So yeah, we're going to be here for a while. Chat to us. I hope you're all here for a while as well. Let's keep cracking on with things. So yeah, if there is anything that we can do to help, do let me know. Keep making stuff. You're doing really well. Keep on keeping on. And if you ever have any questions or any queries, please do reach out. I'd be really interested to make sure that we can all make more and more Jubensha more and more prevalent and exciting for more and more people. If you don't want to do any of that as well, you don't have to. Thank you for listening and getting this far, and I hope you've enjoyed the talk and the presentation, and I hope to hear about all of the wonderful things you're doing soon. I'm not an expert on this. I just happen to have made one, and I'm telling you about how I've made one. So if you are an expert, respond, reply. There's no right way of doing this, and we need to encourage everyone in as many different ways as possible. So yeah, let's get the ball rolling. Let's get the conversation started. Let's make more Jubensha.